everyone, welcome to another edition of the Manager's Roadhouse podcast, where we take on topics that are important to managers in a comfortable roadhouse kind of way. And today's topic is developing business acumen. And to help me with that, I have on the phone with me today Jennifer Currence, who is the owner of the Encore Management Group and also the author of Developing Business Acumen. Jennifer, welcome to our show today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm delighted you had time. I know I'm pulling you out of a meeting to do this, so just really excited that you have the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with us today on this. I am curious, what led you to address this particular topic? I know this book is one in a series of books developed for a human resource professional organization. But what led you to this particular topic as one of the 8 topics?
Yeah, so the topic really stems from Society for Human Resource Management. They created 8 different competencies that they said are really key for a human resources professional to be incredibly effective and super wonderful at their job. And their behavioral competencies that are above and beyond any technical expertise. And so I asked the question, interestingly, since we're talking about managers, I asked the question, like, well, these 8 behavioral competencies, which are business acumen, applying critical evaluation, consultation, communication, relationship management, cultural and global effectiveness, leadership and navigation, and ethical practice. I said, why are these only for HR? It seems like these are wonderful competencies for anybody in business to have. And the person I spoke with at SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, said, yeah, I agree, they are. So I am now using these 8 behavioral competencies in the work that I do on creating leadership development programs and really combining it all. The books are focused on the HR world because they are published by SHRM, and they wanted me to start with business acumen because that's the thing that they're finding is really asked about the most. And one of the things that CEOs in organizations are wanting from their HR professionals to have a better understanding of the business and what's going on in the world and the trends and the like.
All right. Now, I think it makes sense. We probably should start with a definition of business acumen. What are we talking about when we say, business acumen?
So acumen is really just being able to understand any topic fully. And so therefore business acumen is being able to understand your business from an HR's perspective and from a management perspective. I think there's really 2 ways to look at it. It's your internal business and your external business. So internally, your business is being able to understand each function, breaking down the silos, not being just focused on what you are doing in your particular job, but understanding how what you do every day affects the different functions of the organization and affects the organization as a whole. That's the internal piece. External environment is really what's going on out there in the world. Some of the trends that are we're focusing on now are we have the Me Too movement that's big. How does that affect our business? You might have industry trends that are really happening and are key to your business. And so there's a lot of different things that we can focus on in the external environment that affect our business as well.
Okay. Is it fair to say, I don't want to oversimplify, but it sounds like general awareness in general, and then perhaps the activities that would stem from being aware in both the internal and the external factors of the business. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, that's a good way to say it, because a lot of times we spend so much time, our college education and our really detailed experience and just going to work every day, focusing on what we do and what we know, that we get myopic sometimes. Okay. And I just read this term the other day, myopic versus we-opic.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So we really need to focus more on the we instead of just focusing on what's important for us.
Sure, yes.
To keep the business acumen.
And I found that same to be true in my own research. Awareness is one of those elements where managers who are better at what they do seem to have that awareness, whereas others, who who need a bit of help, I think you just nailed it right on the head there, where you say a bit myopic in their view, which doesn't help the organization, doesn't help the team, and really doesn't help the manager either. So probably most important of all. So I noticed chapter 2 in the book of Developing Business Acumen talks about finances and accounting, and correct me if I'm wrong, the series is intended to help most especially the small business owner. Is that what the series was, if I remember right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So
for small business.
Okay, cool. So I was noticing chapter 2 has to do with finance and accounting, something that maybe other managers don't have to deal with, but I know that even small business owners sometimes shy away from dealing with their finances and accounting, which would seem odd for any business owner. But how do you help them get past this if you find that there are managers who really don't want to face the numbers? How do you help them get past that?
Yeah, well, so if you think about why do we shy away from things, it's usually because we don't understand them, or we don't really know about it. So we well, I don't really know about that, so I'm just going to ignore it and hope that it goes away.
Right.
Or I'm just going to do my finances. I have a couple dollars in my bank account, so that's okay. I'm good. I'm in the black.
Sure.
Or if I'm in the red, that's all right. I don't fit your ads. I can put on a credit card, or however you're financing your business. I guess with small business might be, startups might do credit cards. I've read about that happening.
Right.
But really, take some time to understand. Ask a mentor to teach you. There's free audit. You can audit a free course on Coursera.org, which you talk about a lot. COURSERA.org has some great classes from well-known universities that you can audit for free about learning how to understand finance or financial statements, and or read my book.
All right, that's right. That's chapter 2, everyone.
Yeah.
Very good.
It's a really basic understanding of that.
Okay. And you're right to make this point. This would be true with anything having to do with managing. Ignoring it probably won't help solve it. And in a different topic, I'll speak to this point with respect to managers who really need to address an issue where maybe a team member isn't being a really good team player, and yet there's a reticence to address it. And I've always asked the question: you think it's going to get any better if you just don't? And yeah, that's a different topic for a different day. But I think it does touch on awareness, and which is a big part of acumen. And I'll go from there. So also let's talk about operations. Another chapter in the book has to do with dealing with business operations in general. And how would you define that? And what advice would you give to managers about the operations side of the business they have?
Well, operations is so broad. It can, depending on the business, it can include a lot of different aspects. The manufacturing environment, that would be included in their production. It could be logistics and shipping. So understanding what it is about your business that creates the operations, and I think the important part is to really have a process around the operations and to understand exactly what it is. And again, looking at other, subscribing to an industry magazine to be able to understand some of their processes that they do, and understanding the entire life of the business. So I think in that book I put a personal example. A company that sold olives. And so I wanted to understand the life of the olive. So it starts with, the olive tree in Spain, and then how they harvest the olives, and how they package them up and ship them to America, and how we sell them, and how we get them into the pantries of our customers. So understanding that complete cycle of your product is really kind of the basic of operations.
Thank you. And again, that makes a lot of sense. I think there are managers who focus only on what they are responsible for, what their team is responsible for, particularly for small business owners who are managers. Obviously, they need to know the whole process end to end. But in the larger organizations, folks can tend to get a bit siloed in their thinking. Just for a second, let's talk about the benefit of knowing the whole picture, and how it could benefit them and their team to be very aware of every step of the process for the business they're in.
Yeah, actually, sometimes even in small businesses, the owner-manager will focus on just what they do best and get myopic there as well.
Okay.
So, it happens because we get into a business because of something that we to do, and, like you were talking about earlier, maybe forget about the finance portion of it or the HR portion of it or whatever piece. So I think for any manager, it's so important to understand the entire organization and how they function. Because what happens, in fact, I was speaking with a client yesterday who was talking about a risk between their engineering and their sales. And the CEO was telling me, we have the two leaders of these functions, and they're both on their summit, they're both on their mountaintops, and they're not speaking with each other, they're not speaking the same language, and they're only seeing things from their vantage point. And like you were speaking earlier about the importance of awareness, self-awareness. So this is a great example of that, because a lot of people go into business as the technician because they're great at what they do. So they're like, I'm going to open a business about this. But then they forget about the manager or the entrepreneur piece, right, and being able to manage and look at it from a bigger picture. And right, so the awareness is step one.
Exactly. Proficiency in all three areas is really what's needed for success. Now, we're speaking also, as we talk about awareness, in the book you mentioned in Chapter 7 about environmental awareness. Is that having to do with just the business environment, or are we referring to some other aspect of business management?
Yes, in the book I talk about really two types of environmental awareness, two types of environment, the internal environment and the external environment.
Okay.
And I spoke a little bit about that earlier, but really if you're in your internal environment, it's not just being an expert at what you do, it's understanding each of the other jobs and how they all relate together so that you can improve the business. Why is each job important to the business?
Right.
If you don't understand that in your own organization, if you're only focused on what you are doing, then you're not going to work very well together as a team.
Okay, sure, fantastic. Well, and I think we mentioned already that perhaps there's more managers out there who could use a little bit of reminding on this. So it's great that we're bringing it up.
Yeah.
I imagine you found that in your work as well.
I have, and I'm not denying that it's important for managers to be technically sound in their function. That's important too, of course.
Yes.
And part of having business acumen and being a team player or having really the best interest of the organization at heart is understanding what other people are doing and how you can all work together.
Sure. Now, again, the book is intended for small business owners, but I know that there's plenty of managers who don't own their business and yet have a very a feeling of ownership about it, which is good because I think that helps their productivity and their efficiency. We also, in the book, you speak of entrepreneurial spirit. So for those who aren't owners in the operation, what can we do to help them adopt that and perhaps even help their team members adopt that feeling?
I'm so glad you brought that up. I love that chapter. And it's one of those things that you might not necessarily think about for business acumen, but entrepreneurial spirit is so important because even large organizations, Fortune 100 companies, have an intrapreneur in their organization, and that's really somebody who's has that entrepreneurial spirit and someone who is willing to look outside, think outside the box, think about what a competitor would do if they were to come in and take over the company, to really be able to focus on new and innovative ways to make the business better. So they're the person who comes up with opportunities that other people might not see.
Yeah. And there's creative minds that I think managers need to be aware of and listen to and be open to, because it's that innovative mindset that often makes really big leaps forward for a business, for a team, and maybe even for an entire organization.
Right. Because the reality is, if we're not moving forward, we're falling behind. We are in such a state of constant change right now that we have to be continually looking on the horizon with our binoculars in hand and scouting out what the next opportunity is. Because if we're complacent and we're just doing things the way we're doing things, because that's the way we've always done them, then we're going to fall behind as an organization. So that entrepreneurial spirit helps overcome that.
Yes, thank you. Now, a couple questions I ask all my guests, and I don't really know why I asked this first one. I think I need people to realize they're not alone in the world. What got me started in working with management strategy and helping managers just become better managers was so many experiences I heard from others who were working with managers who weren't quite there yet. So in that category, what would you say is the most unbelievable manager story or experience you may have had? By unbelievable, I mean incredibly amazing they are in a managerial role.
Unbelievable can be taken a lot of different ways.
Yeah, so I don't like focusing on negative typically, but again, I think there's people who need to realize they're not alone out there.
So the first thing that comes to mind is I was working in an organization, and it was a small business, and the CEO was yelling at a salesperson on the phone for about 45 minutes.
Wow.
And just consistently reiterating and, doing all of the talking and none of the listening. So, in my view, the salesperson was the one who was out in the field, who had the closest touch points with the customer, and in this case had a lot of prior experience with the customer, much more so than the CEO. So I think a lot of times managers do that, and by that I mean they will focus on what they think is right and what they know has worked for them in the past without listening to other individuals.
You tell all managers just one thing, what would it be?
I teach at the University of Tampa. I teach in the management school, in the business school there.
Right.
And one of the things that I tell the future managers of the world is the four most important words you can have as a manager and use as a manager is, what do you think? And then shut up and listen.
Perfect.
Because if we don't ask our people who are closest to our customers what's going on, and we don't listen to them, then we're missing out on a huge opportunity to gather data and be better as an organization.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to get together with you about this. And that'll wrap it up for today. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. And stay tuned for another edition of the Manager's Roadhouse podcast coming soon.